You're listening to the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. How we doing? How we doing, everybody? We got the unrivaled TNT League versus the NBA WNBA League. Folks, this one's getting nastier by the minute. I want to talk to you a little bit about today. The lawsuit between the NBA and TNT. Also, talk a little bit about the unrivaled league and what's going on there. And then we're going to talk about CaitlinClark and her position of what it is and what stance is being taken. There's a lot going on in the WNBA, but we'll try to specifically talk about those three areas, and we're going to expand out because there's a lot going on. Now, you got TNT unrivaled, right? That's what you got. The league is expanding. Why is the league expanding? Because you're going into what you call competition, right? And TNT's put a contract on the table. And what they're doing, the initial was 30 players, and they're looking to go past the 30 players. That's right. They're going to go past that. Why? Because the opportunity's knocking at the door. And this one's going to get very, very tricky because now what you've got the NFL that's coming to the board, right? The NFL's come to the table as a partner. Now, as I told you, what you had Kathy Engelbert, okay, is sitting there on CNN. You got NBA Adam Silver sitting on CNN as well. And I'll go over this because, folks, what you're talking about is debt financing here. You're talking about debt financing. What do you got to do? And when you get involved in debt financing, let me tell you how that works out. Basically, the NFL is looking, or the NBA is looking to do a capital raise, right? So they're going to do the pitch, not to the bank. They're not doing it into the U.S. economy, right? There's two economies that happen in America. So stay with me on this. I'll tell you how this all comes together. But there's two economies come into play. And then you've got the U.S. economy, but then you've got also debt financing, right? So what is debt financing? You're going to someone to get money who understands your sole purpose is to make money, right? And you got a lot of people who want to come in, but who can be the most trusted partner that you could have is the NFL. That's right. So that's why you got the Kansas City Sports Commission. That's why you got Patrick Mahomes talking, because the NFL will dwarf this league and really do some outstanding things as far as cross selling. But here's what happened in the debt financing. So now that you got everybody's on Wall Street. Wall Street, here's the pitch. Okay, we like the pitch. Now let's talk about the valuation of the teams. How are you arriving at this valuation, right? Because if you're going to the private market and you're going to get money, which they have to do, the undertaking to build this league out is you got Wall Street's listen to two pitches. There's two pitches that Wall Street actually listen to. They listen to one from the TNT Unrivaled League, and they've listened to one from the NBA and the WNBA. So they're picking and choosing what do they want to do and what side do they want to be on, right? Because you got to pick and choose which one we're going to go with. Now, let's move it a step forward, right? So the NFL says, "Look, we'll give you the private money, but we got a zero tolerance policy." Right? That's a zero tolerance policy. We understand what you're having challenges with, but we don't tolerate those kind of things. So now you're getting in there, and you saw it a little bit. I'll take you to it with Mark Davis, right? Because when you get to Mark Davis, things kind of change, and things kind of change really quickly. So, but you got to ask yourself, you got the NBA and the WNBA. So I just put the NBA because they're leading the charge. You got the NBA and the WNBA. They stage a walkout. You got no players. Well, TNT is saying we're in a lawsuit. We're going to just go ahead and change our plans. We're going to pick this whole thing up because you got them in a vulnerable point, right? You have the NBA and the WNBA in a vulnerable point. And when you go to that separate economy, right, and you go there for the sole purpose of getting money, that's a private sector, private industry. You're going there to say, look, here's how much money I need. This is how much you're going to give you. First, we need to get all our money back first. And then we need to also be able to benefit from this in the future. Now, let's talk about how is this different from the partners that the WNBA has today, right? How's this any different? Because you're saying, Mike, Money Mike, we already know they got a lot of partners. Yeah. But all the partners they're not digging down any more deeper in the capital, right? So now you reach this point. This is where it makes sense to go get the raise, okay, and to get the capital. because now you've got the league where it's right at its peak potential. So now they're going to go in there and they're saying, okay, let's do the valuations because that's what Wall Street needs to go. And what are we talking about? Like NFL owners, okay? I'll give you like David Tepper, right? David Tepper owns Carolina Panthers. Okay, he's a hedge fund manager, right? So he's going to analyze the data. He's going to look at you establishing your valuations for your teams, each city. So things, excuse me, things are going to get a little complicated in that rent because you got to do a debt raise. Now, when you do this plan and everything changes, you got to understand something. This goes back to what Mark Cuban of the Dallas Mavericks was saying. You not only got to be not only a team owner, you got to be a real estate owner. And this is where it gets real complicated and it gets real tricky. But who has the real estate or the ability to produce real estate and produce stadiums? NFL can do it better than anybody else, right? They can do that better than anybody else. So when you got the WNBA doing this cleanup, now this one sounds to me like an NFL cleanup now that I dig into it, because you got to understand one thing about the NFL is the NFL has zero tolerance policy, no tolerance whatsoever, right? No domestic, no DUI, no nothing, right? And you got them coming up, their name keeps popping up, and they've got a deeper pocket than anybody that's coming in, right? So you look at that and you say, TNT, these guys are going to do a lawsuit. They're walking out. You're looking at who they're trying to sign. And of course, you want to sign CaitlinClark, but you don't want to sign CaitlinClark, right? Because here's why you don't want to sign CaitlinClark. Because everybody's saying, well, Caitlin's going to sign. Well, you really don't, because you got to show, okay, the investors that you can do this on your own, right? So what does that lead me back to? That leads me to a special man. I'll tell you what. If you ever get in, if you ever get into Geno, man, you know what? I'll say it like this. Geno thinks sometimes he's slick, right? But now, I'm not calling Geno slick. Ultimate respect for Geno, but here's the deal. Geno will come up with scenarios that'll really get you, right? So what did he come up? And he's saying to the NCAA, we need all of everybody to really participate and spark and keep the momentum going, right? Now, Geno's a college coach. This is what I tell you about these college coaches, right? They're just bagging to get in this game, right? They won in the pro game better than you ever could think, right? So he's saying, look, hey, let's give a lot of credit to the WNBA, okay, the players, because I need players now. That's just what Geno's saying. While he's speaking, I'm translating for you so you really get it, right? For the spark of women's basketball that they have given, and to also to former star, Iowa star, CaitlinClark, right? Because that's his pitch, right? So, and you've heard Geno, you heard what they did. They go out and get the what they want to do is they want to go out and get the Iowa players, right? Let's go get who. Let's make her comfortable, right? Everybody thinks you're gonna have to prepare a plate for Caitlin to be on, folks. That's not true. Caitlin don't even care what plate she's on, right? Caitlin, all this stuff here, Caitlin could care less about it because it has nothing to do with the game, right? It has nothing to do with the game, and you got to understand that the NFL is a huge brand. It's a big shield. You talk about public relations director. For those of you who have been in an NF stadium and have done media there, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. There is no room for error. There is no mistakes with the NFL. Their brand, nobody will damage it. And if you get them in, I mean, that's going to really tighten up everything that's going on. It's no longer a loose game. So you got to pick a partner, right? But it's debt financing, right? So you guys look, well, Mike, what's debt financing, right? Well, you got something that you built that's so great. Now you got to go out and get extra money to complete the task, right? Because all your investors, they're out of money. Okay, so now you got to go out and get more money. But what are you running into? Eventually, you're going to run into J.P. Morgan and how America was built, right? That's where this thing's going. And you got to really look at it. You got to look at some of these coaches, man, right? Because I'm bringing this here. Here's where the NFL won't tolerate anything like this, right? You got Christie Sides, right? You leave it better than what you found it, right? Now, look at that statement to go from when you get the job to being humble to basically you're almost flipping a finger up at the organization, right? Christie Sides, right? And you left it better than what you found it. Now let me evaluate all that statement because all that statement is way out of line. Now it's way out of line. Let me tell you why it's way out of line. And here's where I'm going to tell you the WNBA needs to get out of the recycling business, right? Because you're recycling coaches now. And here's my question on why you need to get out of recycling business. Because here's what you should ask your coach. Of all 7 of those coaches that are fired, how many of them can coach in the NBA? How many of them can coach in the NBA? Period. That's hands down. If you don't have any of them that can coach in the NBA, why are you recycling bad performance back into bad performance again? You got to cut bait on that. Let me tell you why. There's enough women that work in the NBA coaching, they're in there. I'm telling you, they're in there deep. They can come on back here. So when you talk about NBA, when I say NBA coaches, I mean they got NBA coaches that are not going to sit there and Christie Sides. Can you imagine an NBA coach saying, "Well, I'm leaving you better than you found it"? Right? Come on, right? You get the job off of handshake of Linda, right? Because you have a relationship there. It was never you were never proven to do this, right? You were never proven to do this. And you got to understand the coaches, as I tell you. And folks, this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. We're powered up by fanatics. We're feeling good. We're bringing it to you just the way it should be done. And that's the only way we do it. We'll often be imitated, never duplicated. So just remember, you're going to have other people pick up on the stories where I'm telling. They're going to try to spin it around and do it a different way because this thing with the high profile coaches, Unrivaled is jumping in that fire, right? Because these are all their players. That one really, if you've been around grassroots, you scouted NCAA talent, you scouted professional talent. All of a sudden, you got all of these players who play for Geno. You have all these players who play for Don Staley, play for Lisa Bluter. They're playing for Ohio State. You got all these players who are playing, okay, or played for these coaches that played for Kim Mulkey. These are all their players. So what would it be for them to be on the sideline coaching all their players or the other players, right? So that's what you got. But then you get Christie Sides. Let me get back to it. Let's stay on track. How are you going to say you left it better than you found it when we gave to you, okay, the second pick in the draft, NaLyssa Smith, right? Okay, then after that, we gave you the first pick of the draft, okay, Aaliyah Boston. Then after that, we gave you the first pick of the draft again, Aaliyah Boston, right? So you look at it, now you're trying to pat yourself on the back to say what you did. You did absolutely nothing. And here's the deal. If Christie Sides can't walk out of the WNBA and immediately walk into the NBA, then there's no reason to be discussing or telling anybody you left it better than what you found it because anybody could have done that, right? Nobody had to work to get a second pick in the draft, which is basically like having saying you had 3 first round picks, right? And here you come spout and talk about how great a coach you are. This is what I told you guys a long time ago. You got people who think they're more important than what they are in this business. And this business doesn't work like this, right? Because at the end of the day, now you got NaLyssa Smith. This is what I'm talking about when coaches get it wrong. Christie Sides starts saying, I left it better. You can found it. No, you left this thing in a mess, right? Because now you got a player, okay, who's crying out that you've damaged her career, okay? And now what's going to happen is she's going to end up in a shuffle, right? NaLyssa Smith's going to end up in a shuffle because of that charade during a playoff game. You can't go back, and to listen to NaLyssa Smith, to all her people and all the people that support her family and everything, you're going to have a fresh start. You're not going to be able to come back in Indiana and erase the damage, right? Because you're going for a championship. So you can't, this is not about as a pro. Okay, and here's what I tell you, folks. As we move in this arena of grassroots, and I'm in it, right? So what do I mean? I'm in it. I mean, I'm constantly scouting out looking for players to go into the WNBA. Why? Because my first cousin, who we work together, he's an NBA, WNBA agent, right? So this is how the process works. But here's where I'm going to be. If I'm managing NaLyssa Smith, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you, hey, look, this is the deal, right? Here's the deal. You can't let a coach's emotion or your personal emotion get tied up in that coach. You have a contract. Contract doesn't have anything to do with saying emotion, right? So here's my advisement when I get a player like NaLyssa Smith. It's best that we go ahead and get a fresh start because the fans, you may be able to feel good about internally in the building and blame a coach. Don't ever do that, right? Don't ever, ever. I never want to hear a player blame a coach for not performing, right? Because it goes back to me and Chuck Noll. Pittsburgh Steelers won 4 Super Bowls and did it in first class. The English teacher, really good, right? But he said one thing, Chuck Noll said, I'll never forget, if I got to motivate you, I'll fire you. Not one player in the WNBA should have to be motivated to play professional basketball. That's your job, period. Now, when we waive you, that's the harsh reality. When we cut you because you didn't do your job. But I don't want NaLyssa Smith to come back and act like a coach. If you're in the WNBA, here's my deal. If you're in the WNBA and a coach can stop you performing when your performance is based on your contract, that's how you get a contract. So, in other words, you played 9 minutes in the most critical game, and now you want to come back to the organization that, wait, all of this happened to go a full reorg. Let me tell you something, folks. Christie Sides and all this full reorg, right? You got all the people involved. If you would have won the championship last year, if you would have played, nobody would have been even complaining, but you didn't. Okay, so now you got Kelly's got to come over as president. The Simon family's enough's enough, right? You have enough. So then you look, we've got these picks. They got us where we needed to be. Now you got to go get another general manager, right? So now you got a coach who used to coach there, is trying to sit there, got the win total she needed to get, was clear. Kelly was very clear and very objective in what you need to do to keep this job. And if you don't do it, and I can tell you how objective it is, she'll probably tell her something like, Christie Sides, you need to get to the second round. You get to the second round, you have a job, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't make it to the second round, we did that. We got us to the first round. We got a second pick, overall pick in the draft. We got 2 number 1 picks in the draft, and we ended up in the first round of the playoffs. But you haven't done anything different than all the other teams because you haven't won a playoff series. So what am I saying? This thing's getting crazier by the minute. I will tell you this. And what is mean? Look at this. Las Vegas general manager, right? Williams, she's out, right? So you're in there and you're like, we're out now. Here's the thing where it gets kind of cuckoo crazy. And it gets this way for me, and I'll tell you. Well, what I mean by that is you get cuckoo, Cocoa Puffs, and crazy sometimes. You got the Nevada, you got the Las Vegas Aces. Salute to Mark Davis, okay? I always tell you that's a good organization. Took over for his dad, great deal. I always gonna tell you, Will Kiss, Oakland Raiders. Yeah, Oakland, it's Las Vegas now. Las Vegas Raider public relations, man. Always appreciate you. And Sac Cultural Hub as well. Had an enjoyable time coming to Raiders. Can't wait to get back to Vegas, do it again, right? But let's stick to the task at hand, the WNBA. So here you got Williams, who has Las Vegas Aces, Becky Hammond, I feel the best coach in the business. Indiana Fever had anything to do, you go over to Mark Davis and you figure it out, give him a first-round pick and get Becky Hammond, right? Because if I'm going to replace Christie Sides, I don't want to replace Christie Sides with another Christie Sides. I got to have somebody that can coach in the NBA, right? Can Becky Hammond coach in the NBA? Yes. Are there women coaches in the NBA that people do not know about? Yes, there are, right? So the women can get it in. Now, the deal is, how do you get all that women's talent back from the WNBA and bring it back over to the WNBA? Excuse me, from the NBA back to the WNBA. Because now you're firing general managers, right? So there's a firing spree going on because everybody's there. Now, who's going to capitalize on that? Now, break this out. And this one here, you'll get a kick out of this. The NBA and TNT are in a lawsuit. All right, here's the basic crux of the lawsuit of how it's going together because this was all shocking. The relationship NBA and TNT had went on for 40 years, right? Been on a long time. Great relationship. But here's what happened. They had a match clause offer, right? They had a match in there that says, look, anybody comes along, whatever they offer, all we have to do is match it. Like NFL free agency, right? Is a restricted. So you can make an offer, but if we match it, the player stays, right? So that one there is how that should have worked. And TNT matched it, but they still went with Amazon, right? So TNT is sitting there, and man, you talk about somebody can boil an egg on their forehead. Trust me, TNT, more money, right? Because what does TNT do? They're a media conglomerate. So where do they go? They go to that other economy too. I always will tell you this debt financing. I'm only going to say the word. I'm not going to get into expertise in it, but it's a part of corporate enterprise business that can be a game changer for you. Because if you go and make your pitch, because you got to have WNBA, NBA is making a pitch to the private investors now because they're looking for debt financing. They need people who have money to give them money when they got something that's so outstanding we could scale off the roof, right? So that's with the team valuation. But you don't have the liability, or I'm not going to say liability, the debt or toxic assets that the WNBA has. What is a toxic asset? Is you got a lot of people have lost a lot of money. That's hard earned cash from funneling money over the years, right? So they don't want to just let that money go. But now you got Unrivaled saying, look, here's the deal. All of these players you got there, man, we can sign 100 of them because here's the deal is going to happen. By the time you get these players over there, which they do not have contracts, right? They don't have contracts. Then they start sticking them in there. They're going to sign them to contract. They're going to sign them to more contracts. Pretty soon they're taking all the players in the league. This can get ugly, folks. And this Unrivaled Geno, man, let me tell you something about Geno. I salute Geno because I always tell you about UOP, and let me tell you about UOP. And you get in there, and you got TNT and the Unrivaled League, right? So you got Geno. Here's why I like Geno and why I like Sacramento and everything. Geno brought the UConn Huskies down to pay UOP with Lynn Roberts, right? They had a relationship. They did a home and home, right? I mean, you talk about the packed house, okay, out in Stockton, California at UOP. You would be amazed. You got standing room only to see the UConn Huskies, right? So Geno's involved in this. Geno also smart. He's going to the NCAA and say, let's keep the momentum because he's going to keep that shine off of Paige Buchers, right? But there ain't no way Geno's letting him have they're not going to get Paige Buchers, right? So here's the deal because they got people lined up who are going to do the same thing, and this thing's going to get wild. So TNT says, let's go sign them all, right? They gave the same pitch that the NBA and the WNBA gave to the private industry, and it's economy within an economy, right? Because you're actually taking that wealth and you're going to people who make money for a living, right? Wall Street, that's what they do. They make money for a living. Okay. So when they give you money, it's with the sole purpose of making money and gaining leverage with you into perpetuity of getting all that money back, right? Or sometimes they're just saying, hey, give us the money, and then you got an end game to this where we make all the money, we give you what we agreed to, and then we separate. You go your way, and Wall Street says, great, you know what? I made $800 million off the WNBA. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find another opportunity. That's how it works. Everybody's in the game. I mean, you can look at Saudi Investment Bank, right? That's a big player out there that's looking for fine money. The bankers in Saudi Arabia, right? So what does Saudi Arabia do? They get in the actual PGA golf. Next thing they do, they're in boxing. You think they don't have their eyes on that? They don't love this game as well? Basketball, anything that deals with sports, and you're talking about a wealth of money. You talk about me talking about a commodity or a brand. You know what their commodity is, and it's used all over the world? Oil. That's number one commodity. I mean, you get over there to Russia. What's their commodity? Oil, right? So you got these guys who have wealth, a generations of generational wealth. Because every time you got a thousandaire, guess what? Somebody becomes a millionaire, right? Millionaire was great. Well, now that everybody become a millionaire, now people got to become a billionaire, right? So when you see LeBron and all these guys that are out there and you're seeing them, hey, he's a billionaire, right? Well, that's great. But then you cross the street and you got trillionaires, right? So you go over to their countries, they're trillionaires, right? So the country has more money because of the commodity, and that's why they can play the players so much money, right? So you got all of this now. Wherever the money's coming from, does it matter? Really, it doesn't. Okay, it's just debt financing is what it is. And if you look in and get into it, you'll find it very interesting of how you go to the private sector. It's an economy. You have the U.S. economy where you have the gross national product, the domestic national product, and you have a circulation of goods and services, right? That's one economy. The other economy that TNT and NBA and WNBA is going into because plans are changing now is they got to go to the private industry wealth, right? So now you're dealing with people who do this solely for the purpose of making money, right? They pitch it to you. If you need $1 billion, we can give it to you. You need $5 billion, we can give it to you, right? But here's the deal: you got to pay for it, right? Because you go to Warren Buffett anytime you want, right? You go to Buffett and say, "Hey, I need $5 billion." Well, he's going to want preferred, right? His money comes back to him first. Then he's also getting a pot of your money. So your hands are going to get tied. You're going to get tied up again. That's tricky business, folks. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. So what do we got? We're firing GMs. You got Mark Davis. They got change of plans. They're firing everybody. You got different things that are going on. And I always tell you about Mark Davis. You got the Las Vegas Aces just fired the general manager. And that's the deal. He's not going to take too much. There's no tolerance. So he cut the deal, right? You got Will coming in there. You got Christie Sides, telling America I left it better than I found it. Well, I don't have time for that. And neither does the Indiana Fever. So you're only looking at your own ego when you do stuff like that, right? And you know what? The general manager of Las Vegas Aces, that didn't happen, right? Then you got Becky Hammons shouting out at the who's Becky shouting out at the Chicago Sky for firing her best friend Spoon, right? So everybody's got an opinion, and I think Williams just after you got 6 Olympians on there and you're back-to-back champions. I don't know how you put a statement like this that I was excited to bolster the team's bench. Look, you won back-to-back. What bolstering do you need? But Las Vegas doesn't need any bolstering. Las Vegas has just done what every team does. You won it. The thrill of the victory is gone, and now you kind of go do it somewhere else. Right? You got NBA TNT walked out lawsuit. That's going to happen. And I tell you what, unrivaled. Oh, Mr. Geno, my. Whenever you hear the name Geno, what's Geno up to it now? Geno's pumping a league. Geno's pumping a full-on competition league with investors behind it, private money, and they have got something going down. They're going to take it from 30 to 36. Next thing you know, it'll move to 60. Next thing you know, it's like, why don't we just sign them all, right? I mean, and at some point, if they sign all your players, this is what I don't understand. If they sign all your players and the league overlaps, right? It overlaps to when you return. If all of them are playing on rival because you're locked out, they're going to be on contract. They're not going to be showing up tomorrow to come back and play because they're not getting paid the money. This is a big on deal, folks. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of things in sports. It's one of them I just can't get a hammer on. This is the Money Mike City Kitty Radio Podcast. We're powered up by Fanatics, but that is what it is. TNT and the Unrivaled League versus the WNBA. Plans have changed. It's an arms race. It's going to be an arms race for players. All things are possible to those who believe. We'll see you soon.